Hi, Dr. Jim Dittmar here again for another topic, fundamental topic that you need to be aware of as you enter the MSOL program. And again, this is a concept that is emphasized in our first course, History and Theory of Leadership. This is not a leadership theory, but it's another one of those ideas that follows us through our studies in the MSLS program. The word is paradigm. You may have heard of this term. It may be a term that you're familiar with. It may be a term that you've heard but do not clearly understand what it's all about. And so I want to give you just some introductory ideas. And I'm going to be borrowing ideas from a guy named Joel Barker, who has done quite a bit of work on this idea of paradigms, and he's a futurist, some would call him. And he's done a lot of video media presentations on this as well as writing. And so I'm going to summarize some of the things that he has to say to us in terms of what a paradigm is. Now this idea of paradigm first came to us from a book by Thomas Kuhn written back in the late 50s, early 60s called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And what he was trying to say is that when scientists come up with a whole new understanding of a phenomena or of something, and it changes the way we look at it, there has been a paradigm shift. Paradigm in that sense are all of the rules and the concepts and the theories, whatever, that govern that particular idea. So for instance, Copernicus, back in the 14th or 15th century, I believe, or it could be the 16th century, forgive me on that one, but Copernicus posited that the Earth was not the center of the universe, that it was a solar system that had the sun at the center, and the Earth was one of several planets revolving around it. And at the time, that was revolutionary. That was considered, heretical even, and he was persecuted for that concept by the church at that time. But keep in mind that what he was saying was there's a whole new set of rules, a whole new concept of how to understand what's going on in our solar system. So it changed all the rules, if you will. That's happened at different times during even the 20th century, when Einstein and his theory of relativity again reset the rules for understanding the phenomena of time and space in our universe. Newton, when he saw a universe that was governed by particular rules and structures that no matter where you were or in the universe, subatomic level to the grandest galaxy in the universe, these rules all applied. Einstein's theory comes along and it challenges that and says there's different rules at play in some instances, in some places, and so forth in this world in which we live. Now you may be wondering, what am I talking about science for in a leadership program? Again, it's this idea of the paradigm. And the paradigm is designed, as a definition, is a set of rules or regulations that establish limits or boundaries that guide us to be successful in solving problems within a particular model, theory, or framework. Paradigms are problem-solving systems. Paradigms are again, a lens through which we see things as we operate. As leaders, it's important to understand paradigms in terms of what paradigms are currently in functioning in this world, what things are governing the way we understand organizations and the way we understand how leadership works. If you've already seen the piece that I did on Joe Ross, you'll notice that in that conversation that I have about him, he talks about the industrial paradigm and the post-industrial paradigm. And again, he's talking about paradigm in the same way. In the industrial paradigm, as I explained it in that presentation, that was a set of rules under which people operated within organizations at that time. what he suggests is a leadership model for the post-industrial era. That's the era that we're currently living in. And so again, there's quite an interesting number of examples, and I'll have a few more just to make this point. Paradigms act as filters. Filters in the sense that if you're functioning according to a particular paradigm and you have that framework in mind, it actually can filter out data that doesn't line up with your perspective, with your filter. If you have a paradigm or a view, a set of rules about the humans, about people, and about human nature, and who they are, and how they work, and so forth, that's going to affect how you lead. Not James McGregor Burns, but McGregor back in the late 50s came up with the theory X, theory Y concept. And in it he said, there are those who believe in the theory X concept or theory of workers and employees, and that is that they're lazy, they can't be trusted, they have to be continuously supervised directly, and are not capable of any creative on their own kind of thinking or work. He suggests a theory Y, another paradigm of looking at people. And he says, I believe that workers aren't that way, that employees are creative, that they can be trusted, that they can be encouraged to work and do great things if you understand them in that way, if you understand what human work is in an organization. And by imposing this sort of theory X paradigm, if you will, on an organization and on people, the very structures that you put in place discourage the kind of behavior that he thinks theory Y types of leadership or types of understanding will encourage. So you can see that even in these kind of theories, if you apply the concept of paradigm, that it makes a difference in terms of how you understand something. Again, these paradigms are fundamental beliefs in the nature of things. The paradigm effect is the fact that we can actually be so committed to a particular view of things, a paradigm, that we can't even see data that contradicts that. It just doesn't, it makes no sense to us, and so we ignore it. We don't even consider it. And again, as leaders, if you're thinking strategically and you're locked into a particular paradigm of how your organization functions and the products that it produces, whether they are services or whether they are real physical things, if you are locked in and you don't see what's happening outside the organization, what changes are coming down the line, how the rules of how you make things, think of Kodak, for instance. Kodak's paradigm was film. That was its moneymaker. Even though it invented the digital camera, this is really amazing, it invented the digital camera. It was so locked into a paradigm of making film for cameras as its moneymaker, basically, that it did not develop the technology and got behind the eight ball, so to speak, as everyone else began to adopt digital technology. It's that paradigm effect. It filters everything. And another interesting concept that Barker talks about is when a new paradigm comes along that's that radical, everything goes back to zero. That means you're starting all over again in a particular area. So again, going back to camera technology, when digital became the thing, it was clear film was out, everybody goes back to zero. You either start with digital from the ground up or you're done. And so that's, again, another one of these principles of paradigms. So here's just some summary statements. Paradigms are common in all areas of life. We all have paradigms that we see things. Some are more fundamental and far-reaching than others. We all have paradigms in terms of how we view human nature. And depending on your view, your paradigm of human nature, you're going to respond in a particular way as a leader. And so we all have those. Paradigms help us focus on what's important and what isn't in terms of problem solving. We see data or we don't, and that's okay. But it can also lead to this idea where we we either have the paralysis of our paradigm not letting us move out of it, or the paradigm effect, which doesn't allow us to see new information, important kinds of things. I mentioned that when paradigm shifts, everything goes back to zero. And you can change your paradigm, if you will. You're not necessarily genetically coded to only see in one way. You need to be aware of them. You need to be able to understand that things change. So again, paradigm, fundamental concept in our program. It's something that from time to time will come back, and you'll be able to discuss further in terms of how this concept helps organize our lives and how it creates a view of how we see things. So thank you very much. Hope this was helpful.